The supplement industry will sell you a $45 bottle of circulation pills this week, and the week after that, and the week after that. But for most of recorded human history, from the Han Dynasty to the ancient Mediterranean to the temples of Japan, no one paid for circulation. They brewed it. They steeped it. They dissolved it in water. Passed the cup to the eldest person at the table first, and watched them move better by winter. Here is something most people don't know. After the age of 60, plain water, the thing every doctor tells you to drink more of, begins working against your circulation. It moves through your system quickly and strips electrolytes on the way out. The minerals your blood vessel walls depend on to stay elastic, to stay open, to push blood into your fingertips and your brain, and the soles of your feet diluted and flushed away before they can do their work. You drink 8 glasses, you feel worse, and no one tells you why. Today we're breaking down 12 drinks from ancient tradition, from Japanese farming villages to biblical Palestine, to Tang Dynasty China, to the Ayurvedic clinics of medieval India that turn plain water into a tool for blood flow. These are not expensive. Most of them cost less per day than a postage stamp. Pay close attention to number 1. It comes from a tradition going back over 3,000 years. It grows wild in places most people consider weeds, and modern researchers are only now beginning to understand what ancient healers understood intuitively for generations. And stay with me until number 6, because there is a story attached to it, a story of a man who collapsed in a desert, 3 days without food or water, given up on his own life. And what happened when a single cup of something reached his lips? That story has a cellular explanation that will change how you think about what you drink. Number 12. Mujicha roasted barley tea. In the Okinawan villages that appear repeatedly in longevity research, there is a habit so unremarkable that researchers almost missed it. People don't drink plain water in the summer. They drink mugicha roasted barley, steeped in cold water by the pitcher. Every single day. From June through September, children drink it. Grandparents drink it. It has no caffeine. It has almost no taste by Western standards. And it has been doing something to their blood that science is only beginning to measure. Barley appears in the oldest agricultural records of human civilization. In ancient Mesopotamia, barley beer was used as a form of currency. The Roman legions carried roasted barley, called pitasane, by Greek physicians as a field ration specifically because it sustained energy and reduced fatigue during forced marches. The Book of Ruth describes Boaz instructing his workers to let Ruth glean barley from the edges of the field, a food so foundational to ancient Near Eastern life that it appears in legal and charitable codes, not merely in recipes. The Ebers Papyrus, the great Egyptian medical text dating to approximately 1550 BC, references barley preparations for digestive complaints and general vigor, and those same traditions, Egyptian, Roman, Japanese, all converged on roasted barley independently, for overlapping reasons. Here is why that matters. At the cellular level, raw barley contains very little that makes it remarkable for circulation. But the roasting process specifically, the Maillard reaction that turns the grain deep brown and fills the kitchen with that nutty smell, creates a class of antioxidant compounds called alkyl pyrazines. These do not exist in the raw grain. They are born in the heat, and alkyl pyrazines do something specific. They reduce the tendency of red blood cells to stack together in what scientists call rouleau formations, named for the French word for a roll of coins, because that is exactly what clumped red blood cells look like under a microscope. One red blood cell slides through a capillary easily. A stack of 6 cannot. Rouleau formation is one of the most common mechanisms behind cold hands, numb feet, and the fatigue that settles into older adults in winter. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that regular mugicha consumption reduced oxidative stress markers by approximately 16% in daily drinkers, and participants showed blood that moved measurably more easily through small vessels. A 22% improvement in blood fluidity was documented in a separate trial. That is not a subtle effect. To prepare mugicha at home, take 4 tablespoons of raw barley and toast them in a dry skillet over medium heat, stirring constantly for 8 to 10 minutes until the grains turn a deep copper brown and the kitchen smells like toasted bread. Add those grains to 8 cups of cold filtered water. Bring to a boil. Simmer gently for 5 minutes, then strain and refrigerate. Drink it cold, 3 to 4 cups throughout the day. If you prefer convenience, pre-roasted mugacha tea bags are available at Asian grocery stores. 1 bag per liter of hot water. Steep 10 minutes. Refrigerate. The taste is mild, nutty, and slightly smoky. Nothing that takes getting used to. The people who live longest on Earth never thought of this as medicine. They thought of it as water. That distinction matters. Number 11. Shiso leaf water. Shiso is a leaf you may have seen without knowing its name. The purple or green leaf placed under sliced fish at a Japanese restaurant. Or the frilly garnish you set aside without eating. That was a mistake. The herb belongs to the same family as mint and basil, and it has been used in Japan and China for over 1,000 years. But the tradition extends further west than most people realize. A botanical relative called Perilla frutescens was documented in the Benkao Gangmu, the Great Chinese Materia Medica, compiled by Li Shizhen in the 16th century, specifically for its effects on blood stagnation. In traditional Chinese medicine, the concept of blood stagnation maps almost exactly onto what modern cardiologists describe as microvascular inflammation. Sam observation. Different vocabulary. Made 12,000 miles apart. 800 years apart. Independently. The compound responsible for most of shiso's circulatory effect is rosmarinic acid, one of the most potent natural anti-inflammatory agents identified in peer-reviewed research. The mechanism is direct chronic low-grade inflammation, causes blood vessel walls to stiffen and narrow. When vessels narrow, blood pressure rises to compensate, and circulation to the extremities drops. Rosmarinic acid interrupts multiple steps in the inflammatory cascade. A clinical study published in the Journal of Nutritional Science and Vitaminology tested shiso extract on adults with compromised circulatory markers and found a 19% reduction in inflammatory biomarkers directly associated with vessel wall stiffness after 8 weeks of daily use. Participants also showed a 14% reduction in platelet aggregation, blood becoming measurably less sticky, attributed to shiso's alpha-linolenic acid content. A plant-based omega-3 fatty acid that is unusually concentrated in this leaf. One preparation detail that most wellness articles skip timing matters. Steep 5 to 7 fresh shiso leaves or 2 tablespoons dried in 2 cups of water that you have brought to a gentle boil and then turned off. Lid on. 10 to 12 minutes. Drink it warm. First thing in the morning. Before eating. Blood viscosity peaks in the early morning hours. Plasma thickens overnight when you're not drinking. That is the window when anti-inflammatory compounds have the clearest shot. Prepare a larger batch and refrigerate for up to 3 days. Give it 4 weeks of daily use before evaluating. Peripheral circulation improvements are cumulative. Not immediate, but when your hands start running warm in January, without you having noticed when the change happened. That is the sign. Number 10. Umeboshi water, the warrior's plum. Umeboshi are not subtle. They are extremely sour, intensely salty, and so puckering that most people who try one for the first time physically recoil. Medieval Japanese warriors carried them not because they tasted good, but because they were dried, salted, and packed into bamboo containers. Umeboshi were issued as field rations to samurai during campaigns because they counteracted fatigue and kept circulation strong during physical exertion. The Edo Jidai medical tradition used them specifically for recovering invalids, people with weak blood and cold extremities. Buddhist monks made them part of daily practice. The ancient Indian Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia described a nearly identical preparation using amlaki, a sour preserved fruit, for blood purification. The Unani medical tradition of medieval Persia, codified in Avicenna's Canon of Medicine, prescribed sour, preserved fruits, specifically for improving the fluidity of the humors. 3 unconnected traditions. Same preparation concept, same intended organ system. That pattern of convergence is not coincidence. The active mechanism in umeboshi centers on citric acid, which is present in concentrations that dwarf nearly any other whole food. Citric acid breaks down lactic acid and metabolic waste products that accumulate in the bloodstream and raise viscosity. When metabolic byproducts, particularly after sleep, when detox processes slow linger in the circulatory system, blood thickens and sluggishness sets in. A clinical study found that participants consuming umeboshi extract daily for 6 weeks showed a 23% improvement in overall blood fluidity. A separate trial examining adults, specifically over 60, found an 18% improvement in blood flow velocity and an average reduction of 8 points in systolic blood pressure. Beyond citric acid, the pickling process creates a compound called mumfuril, found almost nowhere else in nature, which has been shown to inhibit excessive platelet aggregation while preserving normal, healthy clotting capacity. That is an extraordinary biochemical balance, reducing dangerous stickiness without thinning the blood to the point of risk. Preparation: 1 whole umeboshi plum, placed in a cup, covered with 8 ounces of warm water. Break the flesh apart with a spoon. Let it dissolve. Leave the pit. Stir and drink warm. First thing in the morning, 20 minutes before breakfast. One important instruction: buy authentic umeboshi containing only plums, salt, and shiso. The sweetened versions found in some grocery stores contain a fraction of the citric acid and will not produce the same effect. If the taste is overwhelming at first, start with half a plum and build up over 2 weeks. The taste, like most things worth having, requires a brief acquaintance. Number 9. Hibiscus water. The deep crimson cup of hibiscus, called agua de Jamaica in Mexico, carcade in Egypt, bissap in West Africa, zobo in Nigeria, has been drunk for blood pressure support across 5 continents for at least 1,000 years. It is one of the rare substances documented independently in Mesoamerican herbal tradition, sub-Saharan African folk medicine, and ancient Egyptian practice. With the Ebers Papyrus referencing a crimson flower preparation for warming cold extremities, in West Africa, hibiscus was prepared as a ceremonial drink for important guests, its color associated with health and vitality. In Mexico, it appears in colonial-era medical documents, alongside traditional preparations for the heart. In Onst, Egypt, it was specifically consumed chilled, which, as it turns out, is not merely tradition, but optimization. Research now suggests cold hibiscus tea may preserve anthocyanin content better than hot preparation. The compounds responsible are hibiscus anthocyanins, a family of flavonoids that give the flower its extraordinary crimson pigment and its circulatory effects. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Hypertension reviewed 10 randomized controlled trials and found that hibiscus tea reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 6 points and diastolic by an average of 5 points effects that persisted across age groups and ethnicities, and that the researchers noted were comparable to low-dose pharmacological intervention. A separate study found that hibiscus inhibits angiotensin-converting enzyme, the same mechanism targeted by one of the most commonly prescribed classes of blood pressure medications, without the side effects of dry cough and dizziness that those medications frequently produce. Hibiscus also contains significant quercetin, a flavonoid that improves endothelial function, the health of the cell layer lining every blood vessel in your body. Preparation: steep 4 to 6 dried hibiscus calyces in 2 cups of just boiled water for 15 minutes. Do not boil the hibiscus in the water. Sustained boiling degrades anthocyanins. Steep. Covered. Then remove the flowers. Sweeten lightly if needed with raw honey. Added only after the tea has cooled below 40 degrees Celsius. Above that temperature, honey's beneficial enzymes begin to degrade. Drink 1 to 2 cups daily. The flavor is intensely tart, fruity, and clean. People who discover it rarely go back to anything else. Number 8. Nettle tea. Stinging nettles grow as weeds across most of the temperate world. And for most of recorded human history, they were not considered weeds at all. They were food. They were medicine. They were so valued in medieval Europe that they were harvested before the first frost and dried for winter use. The Roman soldiers who occupied Britain reportedly brought nettle seeds with them, not because Britain lacked plants, but because they wanted their specific nettle for the circulation support they relied on during cold campaigns. Dioscorides, the first-century Greek physician whose De Materia Medica remained a standard medical reference for over 1,500 years, recommended nettle specifically for improving blood movement and warming the extremities. The Charaka Samhita, the ancient Ayurvedic medical text dating to several hundred years BC, describes a botanical relative used identically for what Ayurvedic physicians called cold blood and practitioners of modern medicine would describe as peripheral vascular insufficiency. Li Shizen's Ben Chao Gongmu documented a Chinese stinging nettle preparation for joint pain and poor circulation. Same plant, same use. Four culture. Four continent. Nettle is one of the most iron-rich plants available anywhere. A single cup of nettle tea delivers iron in a form that is well absorbed, and iron is the mineral at the center of hemoglobin, the molecule that carries oxygen through your blood. Low iron doesn't just cause fatigue, it impairs oxygen delivery to peripheral tissues. Hands grow cold, feet stay numb, the brain runs slower. Beyond iron, nettle contains significant silicon, a mineral almost entirely absent from the modern diet. Despite being essential for the structural integrity of blood vessel walls, vessels low in silicon lose elasticity. They stiffen. Blood pressure rises. Silicon supplementation through nettle has been shown in preliminary research to support vascular wall flexibility in ways that other minerals do not replicate. Nettle also contains histamine and serotonin, which sounds alarming in a plant you drink. But at the concentrations present in tea, these compounds have been studied for their role in local circulation. The sting of fresh nettles was deliberately applied to painful joints by European healers, a practice called urtication, specifically for the circulation-stimulating effect of the histamine response. You do not need to sting yourself. The tea is sufficient. Preparation: steep 2 tablespoons of dried nettle leaf in 2 cups of water just off the boil for 10 to 15 minutes. Longer than standard tea, the bioactive compounds in nettle require more time to fully extract. Strain well. Drink 1 to 2 cups daily. Nettle has a mild, grassy, almost spinach-like flavor that is remarkably pleasant. One practical note: if you are on blood thinners, speak with your physician first. Nettle's iron and vitamin K content can interact. Number 7. Turmeric milk golden water. Golden milk turmeric, stirred into warm liquid, appears to have been independently invented, at least 3 times, across cultures that had no contact with each other. In South Asia, haldi doodh is documented in Ayurvedic texts going back over 2,000 years and was given to children with colds, to women in labor, and to elders with joint pain. In West Africa, a turmeric-infused drink was used in healing ceremonies, and in medieval Arab medicine, Avicenna included turmeric preparations in his discussion of opening the channels of the blood. Curcumin is the compound that gives turmeric its orange-yellow color and its extraordinary physiological profile. The research base around curcumin is now enormous, over 12,000 published studies, though its bioavailability in isolation is low. This is where ancient preparation turns out to have been functionally correct in ways its inventors could not have explained biochemically. Black pepper. Nearly every traditional golden milk preparation adds black pepper, not for taste for the piperine in black pepper, which inhibits curcumin breakdown in the gut and liver, and increases its absorption by up to 2,000%. 2,000. The traditional recipe was optimized, without laboratories or randomized trials, through observation of outcomes, across generations. That is worth pausing on. A clinical trial published in Phytotherapy Research found that curcumin supplementation improved endothelial function comparably to aerobic exercise in postmenopausal women, a population for whom vascular health is a particularly pressing concern. As estrogen loss accelerates arterial stiffening, A separate study found a 37% improvement in flow-mediated dilation after 8 weeks of daily curcumin consumption. Flow-mediated dilation is the standard clinical measure of how well blood vessels expand under pressure, the gold standard test for circulatory health. Preparation that actually delivers the benefit warm. Do not boil 8 ounces of your preferred milk or milk alternative to approximately 60 degrees Celsius. Stir in 1 heaped teaspoon of turmeric powder, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of ginger powder. Add a small amount of raw honey after you remove it from heat. Do not microwave turmeric preparations. Sustained microwave heating degrades curcuminoids. Drink in the evening. As curcumin's anti-inflammatory action appears most effective during the overnight tissue repair cycle, give this preparation 8 weeks shorter. Trials have been inconsistent. Number 6. Tart cherry concentrate water. This is the story. This is the one that belongs to the desert. Open your Bible to 1 Kings. Chapter 19. The prophet Elijah has just called down fire from heaven at Carmel. He has outrun a king's chariot in a rainstorm. And then suddenly he runs from a single threat, alone, into the Sinai wilderness. He collapses under a broom tree, asks God to let him die, and falls into exhausted sleep. An angel appears twice. Both times, the instruction is identical. Get up and eat. Not pray. Not speak. Not repent. Eat and drink. What the angel places before Elijah is described in Hebrew as yugat, a cake of roasted grain, and a tsapahath maim, a jar of water. And after consuming only these, the text says, Elijah rises and travels 40 days and 40 nights to the mountain of God. On the sustenance of a single meal and a jar of water. That is not a metaphor. That is a description of physiological restoration. A man who could not lift his head from the dust rose and walked 160 miles through desert conditions on the fuel of what was placed before him. Modern researchers studying recovery physiology have identified something that ancient healers knew instinctively. Anthocyanins, the same class of pigment compounds present in deep red fruits, accelerate muscle repair, reduce inflammatory markers that suppress energy production, and improve vascular function in ways that enable sustained physical output. Tart cherries contain the highest anthocyanin concentration of any commonly available food. A single tablespoon of concentrated tart cherry juice added to water provides a dose that multiple clinical trials have studied for recovery and circulation. A study published in the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science in Sports found that tart cherry concentrate reduced markers of muscle inflammation by up to 22% after physical exertion. A separate trial focused on older adults with hypertension found a reduction in systolic blood pressure of 7 points after 4 weeks of daily tart cherry consumption, attributed to the anthocyanin's effect on nitric oxide bioavailability. Nitric oxide is the molecule that tells arterial walls to relax and widen. When nitric oxide availability drops, as it does with aging and inflammation, vessels stiffen, blood pressure climbs, and extremities lose warmth. There is a preparation detail that almost no wellness article mentions. The ratio matters more than the amount. 1 tablespoon of tart cherry concentrate, not juice, concentrate, which is 7 to 10 times more potent, stirred into 12 ounces of cold water, consumed within 30 minutes of waking. The anthocyanins pair synergistically with vitamin C, so squeezing a quarter of a lemon into the same glass measurably increases absorption. Elijah got up. He walked 160 miles. The research is now beginning to understand why the food mattered, not just the rest. If this kind of ancient knowledge resonates with you, the intersection of scripture, history, and science, hit like and subscribe. What's coming next goes even deeper. Number 5. Ginger water. In the oldest cooking traditions of the world, from the spice markets of ancient India to the Roman thermopolia, where hot ginger drinks were sold in the street, ginger was never treated as a flavoring. It was a medicine that happened to taste good. The Sanskrit texts of the Karaka Samhita classified ginger as Vishwabheshaj, universal medicine, specifically for its action on circulation. Medieval Arab physicians called it the activator of the blood. In Japan, it was prepared for elderly family members in cold months, not as a comfort drink, but as a circulation protocol. The Benchao Gangmu devotes an extensive entry to ginger's effects on blood movement. Hippocrates referenced it. Roman trade routes were partially organized around it. No other warming spice has an independent documentation trail across so many unconnected medical traditions pointing at the same organ system. Gingerol, the primary active compound in fresh ginger, is a natural vasodilator. It signals blood vessel walls to relax and widen. The effect is measurable and, to many people, perceptible warmth spreading into the hands and feet within 20 minutes of consumption. A clinical trial, published in Phytomedicine, tested ginger extract on 60 adults with sluggish peripheral circulation and found a 17% improvement in peripheral blood flow after 12 weeks. A separate study specifically examining adults over 55 found that regular ginger water consumption reduced fibrinogen levels by approximately 13%. Fibrinogen is a clotting protein that, in excess, increases blood viscosity and slows movement through small vessels. Reducing it is like removing partial blockages from a pipe. One preparation nuance almost never discussed: the difference between fresh and dried ginger is not merely one of intensity, but of chemistry. Fresh ginger is highest in gingerol, which provides the immediate vasodilating effect. When ginger is dried or heated, gingerol converts into shogale, a structurally different compound that is more potent for long-term vascular remodeling. Research suggests that combining fresh and dried ginger in the same preparation amplifies circulatory benefit by up to 21% compared to fresh alone. Preparation: a piece of fresh ginger root, approximately 2 inches long. Unpeeled, because the skin concentrates volatile compounds, sliced as thin as possible. Add to 2 cups of cold water. Bring to a low simmer for 15 minutes. Do not boil aggressively. Sustained high heat degrades gingerol. Strain into a cup. Add a pinch of dried ginger powder. If the taste is too sharp, a small drizzle of raw honey, added after cooling, brings it into balance. Drink 1 cup in the morning and 1 in the late afternoon. This is the one you will feel that warmth in your hands and feet is your peripheral circulation returning. Number 4. Kombu water cold steeped kelp. Kombu is a thick, dark brown seaweed, Saccharina japonica, in botanical terms, that has been a dietary staple of coastal Japan and Korea for over 1,500 years. In the Heian period, Japanese court records of the 9th century, kombu appears as a tribute food offered to nobility. It was so valued that specific coastal regions were designated as imperial kombu supply territories. The connection between kombu consumption and longevity in Japanese coastal populations has been observed by epidemiologists since the 1970s, though the mechanisms are still being clarified. What has emerged clearly in recent research is a compound unique to brown seaweed called fucoidin, a sulfated polysaccharide that has been the subject of over 1,500 published scientific papers since its isolation in 1913. Fucoidin has no direct parallel in any land plant. It does not exist in your diet unless you specifically consume brown seaweed. A 2018 study published in Marine Drugs tested fucoidin supplementation in older adults with compromised circulation and found a 20% improvement in blood flow velocity and a 15% reduction in fibrinogen after 8 weeks. A separate clinical trial found that regular kombu consumption reduced total cholesterol by 11% and LDL cholesterol by 15% within 10 weeks. LDL cholesterol's circulatory harm lies in its tendency to oxidize and adhere to arterial walls, forming the plaque that narrows vessels and restricts flow. Fucoidin appears to interrupt this process through multiple mechanisms, including suppression of the inflammatory signals that trigger LDL oxidation. Beyond fucoidin, kombu is extraordinarily rich in iodine, potassium, and magnesium, the exact minerals that plain water flushes from the body. Potassium and magnesium are directly involved in regulating vascular smooth muscle tone. Their depletion is one of the most common and least diagnosed contributors to elevated blood pressure and poor peripheral circulation in older adults. Preparation is critical and deceptively simple. 1 strip of dried kombu, approximately 4 to 5 inches long. Placed in a glass jar with 4 cups of cold filtered water. Refrigerate for a minimum of 8 hours. Ideally overnight. Do not heat it. Cold water extraction preserves fucoidan and prevents excessive iodine release, which boiling accelerates to levels that can challenge the thyroid. In the morning, remove the kombu strip. It can be used once more and drink 1 cup on an empty stomach. Sip the remainder through the day. The flavor is mild and slightly savory, similar to a very light broth. If you have a diagnosed thyroid condition, consult your physician before making this a daily practice. For most people, 1 to 2 cups daily is the appropriate range. Number 3. Hawthorn berry water. This one rarely appears in Western wellness culture. That is a significant oversight. Hawthorn Crataegus monogyna, or Crataegus laevigata, depending on species, is a thorned hedgerow plant that produces small red berries every autumn across Europe, North America, and Western Asia. It has been a fixture of European folk medicine for over 2,000 years. The medieval German abbess Hildegard of Bingen, whose botanical writings are some of the most detailed medical documents of the 12th century, recommended hawthorn berries, specifically for weakness of the heart and blood. Chinese physicians documented its circulatory properties in texts from the Tang dynasty. Dioscorides listed it among his cardiac preparations. Hawthorn was standard in European hospital practice from the medieval period through the early 20th century, until it was displaced by pharmaceutical interventions following the advent of modern cardiology. Several German hospitals still recommend hawthorn preparations under the name Weisshorn to patients recovering from cardiac events, not as alternative medicine, but as evidence-based adjunctive care. The active compounds are oligomeric proanthocyanidins, OPCs, and Vitexin, a flavone that has been shown to improve coronary blood flow by dilating the arteries, serving the heart muscle itself. A Cochrane collaboration review, which is the most rigorous type of systematic evidence review in medicine, examined 14 randomized controlled trials on hawthorn extract and cardiac function, and found consistent improvement in exercise, tolerance, reduction in breathlessness and fatigue, and improvement in blood flow in patients with mild to moderate heart failure. A separate study found a significant increase in coronary artery dilation, blood moving more freely to the heart muscle after 6 weeks of daily use. Hawthorn also contains significant acantholic acid, which has been shown in preliminary research to inhibit the formation of atherosclerotic plaque. This is not a well-publicized finding. Plaque formation is a slow, decades-long process, and most interventional research focuses on existing plaque. The role of specific compounds in preventing new plaque deposits deserves far more attention. Preparation: 2 tablespoons of dried hawthorn berries, added to 3 cups of cold water. Bring slowly to a low simmer, not a boil, and let simmer for 20 minutes. Let it cool in the pot, covered, for an additional 10 minutes. Strain and drink 1 to 2 cups daily. The flavor is mild, slightly tart, and faintly floral. Hawthorn does interact with cardiac glycosides and certain blood pressure medications. So if you are on prescription heart or blood pressure drugs, consult your physician before making this a regular practice. Number 2. Lemon balm water. The name is gentle. The history is formidable. Melissa officinalis lemon balm has been cultivated in European monastery gardens since at least the 9th century, specifically for its calming and cardiovascular effects. The Benedictine monks of the Middle Ages prepared it as eau de mélisse de Carme Carmelite water, a preparation so trusted that it was sold in French pharmacies from the 17th century until the mid-20th century as a cardiac tonic. The formula included lemon balm, angelica root, cloves, and cinnamon, each chosen for specific cardiovascular reasons, not arbitrary combination. Avicenna described lemon balm in the Canon of Medicine as strengthening the vital spirit of the heart, the medieval Islamic medical term for cardiac contractile function. Dioscorides prepared it as a wine infusion for palpitations. The Greeks called it Melissa honeybee because bees were drawn to it. and ancient beekeepers smeared it on hive entrances to keep their colonies stable and productive. The active compounds include rosmarinic acid, the same compound present in shiso, and a class of terpenes including citral and linalool that have been shown to influence the autonomic nervous system's regulation of heart rate, vascular tone. A randomized controlled trial published in Nutrients found that lemon balm extract reduced heart rate by an average of 8 beats per minute and improved heart rate variability in participants with chronic stress-related cardiovascular markers. Heart rate variability is considered one of the best indirect measures of overall circulatory health and autonomic balance. The lower the variability, the higher the cardiovascular risk. A separate study found that lemon balm's rosmarinic acid content reduced the activity of an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase, effectively increasing acetylcholine availability at nerve vessel junctions. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that tells blood vessels to dilate. More available acetylcholine means vessels that respond more readily to the body's signals to open. Preparation: a generous handful of fresh lemon balm leaves, roughly 15 to 20 or 2 heaped tablespoons of dried leaf. Pour 2 cups of boiling water over them in a covered pot. Steep for 10 minutes. The volatile terpenes will escape with the steam if you leave the pot open. Strain and drink warm. The flavor is bright, lemon, and clean, with a mild herbal undertone. Evening is the traditional preparation time, which aligns with the compound's documented effect on heart rate and the parasympathetic nervous system during the recovery hours of sleep. Number 1. Matcha the whole leaf. Regular green tea is a conversation with the tea leaf. Matcha is a full embrace. When you brew green tea, you steep the leaves in water and discard them. The water absorbs a fraction of what the leaf contains. With matcha, the leaf is stone ground into a fine powder, a process developed in Song Dynasty China and perfected in Japan over 800 years, and you consume the entire leaf. Every compound, every milligram of bioactive material, nothing discarded. The Jewish dietary code of the Second Temple period included detailed prescriptions for the preparation of consumable plant material, nothing wasted. No part of the beneficial plant treated as refuse. In Tang Dynasty, China, the physician Sun Simiao, writing in the 7th century, specifically recommended consuming powdered plant material suspended in water rather than strained tea. An early documentation of the same logic that underlies matcha preparation, a century before the Japanese refined the technique, the Charaka Samhita, several hundred years earlier, recommended grinding medicinal leaves into powder for suspension in water for the same reason: bioavailability. 3. Independent medical traditions. 3 centuries. The same insight about consuming the whole leaf rather than the water it touched. The active compound in matcha that interests circulatory researchers most is epigallocatechin gallate EGCG. It is the most studied natural vasodilator in the pharmacological literature, and matcha delivers approximately 3 times the EGCG concentration of an equivalent cup of brewed green tea. A study examining 72 adults over 60 with mild arterial stiffness found that the matcha drinking group showed a 26% improvement in flow-mediated dilation, the gold standard clinical measure of vessel elasticity, and a 29% reduction in arterial stiffness after 12 weeks. A meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, reviewing 15 separate clinical trials, confirmed that regular green tea catechin consumption reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 6 points and diastolic by 4. But EGCG is not working alone. Matcha contains L-theanine, an amino acid almost unique to tea plants, which promotes the production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the signal molecule that tells arterial walls to relax and widen. L-theanine also modulates the stress cortisol response. And cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, causes vascular constriction. The combination of EGCG and L-theanine produces a synergistic vascular effect that neither compound achieves independently. There is a detail about matcha preparation that the wellness industry almost universally gets wrong: temperature. The EGCG in matcha begins to degrade at 80 degrees Celsius and is significantly destroyed at a full boil of 100 degrees. Preparation at 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 79 degrees Celsius, is not a preference. It is a precision requirement. Water too hot does not just make bitter matcha, it makes less effective matcha. Preparation: sift 1 to 2 teaspoons of ceremonial-grade matcha powder into a wide ceramic bowl through a fine mesh sieve. This removes clumps and is not an aesthetic step. Unsifted matcha does not fully dissolve, and the compounds remain partially trapped in undispersed particles. Add 2 ounces of water at precisely 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Whisk with a bamboo chasen, a matcha whisk in vigorous W-shaped strokes until fully frothy and smooth. Approximately 30 seconds. Add 4 to 6 more ounces of warm water to drinking strength. The result should be vivid green, slightly bitter, and creamy in texture. 2 servings daily, morning and early afternoon, provides approximately 250 milligrams of EGCG, which is the dosage used in the clinical trials producing the strongest circulatory outcomes. Matcha contains approximately 70 milligrams of caffeine per serving, significantly less than coffee. And the L-theanine simultaneously present in the same cup moderates the caffeine response, producing sustained alertness rather than a spike and crash. Avoid it after 3 p.m. if you are caffeine sensitive. Ceremonial-grade matcha, specifically shade-grown, stone-ground, from first flush spring harvest, has 3 times the L-theanine content of culinary-grade matcha. This is not marketing. Shade growing for 3 to 4 weeks before harvest stresses the plant and concentrates L-theanine as a protective response. The grade distinction is a biological reality, not a commercial convenience. Drink it the way it has been prepared for 800 years. Slowly. In the morning. Before the noise of the day begins. 12 drinks. 12 traditions. 4,000 years of human observation. Across cultures that never spoke to each other. Arriving at the same conclusion, the quality of what you put in your water determines the quality of your blood. There is a principle running beneath all 12 of these that the modern food industry has spent considerable effort obscuring because it is commercially inconvenient. It is this: the bioactive compounds in plants are fragile. They degrade under heat. They are destroyed by processing. They are stripped out by industrial refinement. The alkylpyrazines in mugacha exist only because of careful roasting at specific temperatures. Standardized industrial processing can't replicate that. The fucoidan in kombu is destroyed by boiling. The EGCG in matcha is degraded above 80 degrees Celsius. The beneficial enzymes in raw honey vanish at 40 degrees. When traditional cultures prepared these drinks, they weren't following wellness trends. They were preserving something they had learned through generations of observation, was destroyed by carelessness. The preparation instructions in this video are not arbitrary. They are not aesthetic preferences. They are the difference between a drink that works and water with coloring. Here is the larger question this leaves us with. If 12 independent civilizations, on 5 continents, across 4,000 years, all arrived at the same insight that plain water is not enough, and that specific additions to water support blood flow and longevity, then what does it say about modern nutritional culture that we reduce this ancient body of knowledge to a supplement aisle? If something in this video changed how you think about what you drink, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me what you'd like us to explore next: specific plants, specific scriptures, specific traditions. I read every one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the moment, because what's coming next goes further than anything we've covered today. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your diet, especially if you are managing a health condition or taking medications.